Imagine this. You're drifting through the quiet, dark traveller, where a solitary object, 3i Atlas, moves near the blazing edge of the sun. It should have behaved like a comet, melting, shedding, obeying gravity's patience. But instead, something changed. For a heartbeat, its light surged, a sudden impossible flash, then vanished into silence as if the sun had spoken and it had answered. Scientists measured a shift no model could explain, a motion too deliberate for chance. What are the odds that something born between the stars could respond to light itself? Perhaps it wasn't reaction, perhaps recognition. Stay with me, let's drift a little deeper. Imagine this traveller. Far beyond the comfort of orbit and the quiet order of planets, a single object drifts through the light. It does not belong to our system, nor does it follow any path that we have charted before. It is called 3i Atlas, though the universe has no need for names. For months it moved with impossible precision, gliding through the solar wind like a thought too careful to disturb the silence around it. Then, as it approached the blazing edge of the sun, something in its behaviour changed. Astronomers expected it to flare to fracture, to dissolve into dust under the star's fierce radiation. Instead, what they saw was perfection. The object held its course with the stillness of purpose. No jets, no rotation, no release of vapour. It seemed immune to the chaos that devours every comet. And then, without warning, it brightened. Not gradually, not like ice evaporating into gas, but suddenly, almost reflectively, as if the sun had found a mirror suspended in the dark. For 4 minutes, the light intensified in a way no natural surface should allow. Instruments across multiple observatories recorded it the same pulse, the same instant, confirming that it was real. The object's brightness spiked and then stabilized again, returning to calm as if nothing had happened. Some called it an error in calibration, others a coincidence of data. But the coincidence repeated in every telescope, and coincidence in science is often another word for mystery. At the same moment, a new acceleration appeared. The object's path curved slightly away from prediction, a deviation so small it could have been dismissed as noise, except it wasn't random. It followed a perfect line away from the sun, as though something within the object had felt the light and responded to it. Comets, when they react to heat, vent unevenly, tumble or break apart. 3 Atlas remained steady, its movement smooth, its rotation constant. Outgassing cannot behave like that. Physics cannot bend itself into rhythm. Yet this object moved with rhythm all the same. In the hours that followed, the sun grew restless. Magnetic fields twisted and surged, casting waves of charged plasma across the region where the object passed. One of the largest active zones of the cycle released twin eruptions, great clouds of energy that struck the solar wind like invisible thunder. The object crossed through that storm untouched. Data from probes revealed density fluctuations in the surrounding plasma, brief compressions of energy that seemed to curve around it. The solar wind should have scattered it like dust, yet instead it folded around the object, flowing as though redirected. A coincidence again, perhaps. But 3 anomalies rarely arrive by accident: the light, the motion, the field. Those who study the sky are patient people. They have learned to separate wonder from assumption. But even patience trembles when the data begins to behave as though it is alive. The sequence was too clean: first brightness, then magnetic disturbance, then acceleration. Cause-reaction movement like a chain of intention. The numbers spoke not of chaos, but of timing. In their quiet offices, analysts recalculated the orbit. The result was the same each time. Something had nudged it. Not shattered, not disturbed, nudged. Later, when thermal readings came, they added another layer to the puzzle. The surface of 3i Atlas was far colder than physics allows. Even bathed in sunlight strong enough to melt steel, it refused to warm. It reflected more than it absorbed, and what little heat it did take in seemed to vanish too quickly, dispersed as if through a network of invisible veins. It behaved not as rock nor as ice, but as something that managed its own temperature. No gas, no vapour, no plume of water or carbon. Just silence and reflection. Some scientists compared it to a sail, a sheet so thin and bright that the pressure of photons could drive it forward. Others dismissed the thought as fantasy, but the math refused to cooperate. The object's acceleration matched perfectly with what such a sail would experience. Its reflectivity, its motion, its curve away from the sun, all consistent, all deliberate. A natural object could not do this without disintegrating. Yet there it was, gliding, cooling, surviving. Observers noted another impossibility. The tail of the object, if one could even call it that, did not trail behind. It bent inward toward the sun. The light that should have pushed dust away instead drew it closer, as though the forces had reversed their direction. The tail held its form with magnetic symmetry striations pulsing in gentle waves that echoed the sun's rhythm. To watch it was to see dialogue, not disaster, a conversation between fire and stone. The sun spoke in flares and the object shimmered in reply. When it finally emerged from the solar glare, it was still whole. No fragments, no debris. The same shape, the same glow, but changed somehow. Its brightness didn't fade with distance. It remained constant, as if aware that it was still being watched. The equations of reflection say that light must obey the inverse square of distance, growing dimmer with every mile. 3D Atlas ignored that rule. Its luminosity held steady calm, and unwavering a candle that refused to flicker no matter how far the wind carried it. Then came a whisper from the radio instruments, a faint hiss between frequencies, soft as a sigh through static. It was not a message, only a rhythm of noise, repeating slowly, almost breathing. Some dismissed it as solar interference, yet the sun was quiet. Others noted that the hiss matched the same oscillation in the object's light, repeating every 19 hours. Coincidence again. But by then coincidence had lost its meaning. Around the object, telescopes detected a filament of charged particles trailing like hair in water, not dispersing but weaving, bending, aligning with the invisible architecture of the solar wind. The wake curved slightly northward, away from the plane of the planets, forming a corridor of magnetized space that glowed faintly in polarized light. This afterwake, as they called it, behaved like memory, an imprint of movement that remained long after the traveller had gone. Plasma probes sensed residual current in its path, a field that persisted for hours, as if something still moved within it. When the last data arrived, it showed what no one could easily say aloud. The object was accelerating again, subtly, smoothly, on a new trajectory tilted upward away from the ecliptic, away from us. It had come near the sun, absorbed its energy, and now seemed to be leaving with purpose. Whether it was responding to forces we cannot yet define or following some forgotten instruction, no one could tell. Its reflection grew softer each night until it faded into the black beyond Mars, leaving behind only equations and silence. The debate over its nature filled the halls of science. Was it a natural fragment from another system, a metallic shard shaped by chance and gravity? Or was it something older, a structure adrift responding only when starlight awakened it? The word artificial appeared in whispers, then in drafts, then in cautious reports. But in the end, the data said neither yes nor no. It only said strange. And so, 3i Atlas passes back into darkness. The instruments that once traced its path fall silent. The light curve flattens. The trail of magnetism thins until it is indistinguishable from the noise of space. Yet even as it fades, a quiet thought lingers. What if we did not discover it by chance? What if it has been here before, orbiting not the sun but understanding? In the thought lies both comfort and unease. Comfort because it reminds us that the universe is still capable of surprise. Unease because it hints that we may not be the first to look up and wonder. But in the end, it is only motion and reflection, an object caught between heat and cold, between chaos and design. It carries no message, no proof, only pattern. Traveller. If you look toward the darkness and imagine a fragment gliding through endless light, know that it is still out there somewhere, indifferent yet connected, beyond certainty, beyond sound. It may be only a relic, or it may be a seed. Either way it moves, as all things do, quietly obedient to laws we have not yet written. Tonight the universe whispers again. You are not lost in space, you are part of it. Some mysteries are not meant to be solved, only observed. Silence is the universe thinking. Somewhere beyond our reach, something ancient still moves, and it's all right, traveller, to not understand. Sleep now. The cosmos will keep watch. When the telescopes turned away, The story of Three-Eye Atlas did not end. The light may have dimmed, but in the data it continued to breathe. Instruments left, running through the quiet hours, recorded small irregular pulses, faint shifts in its spectrum barely distinguishable from the hum of cosmic background noise. To most they were errors, the mindless static of machines that had watched too long. But to those who still listened, the rhythm felt familiar, almost deliberate. The object seemed to echo something, not a voice, but a pattern, like a thought repeating itself in the dark. It is here that science meets philosophy. The difference between randomness and intention lies only in repetition. A single anomaly is chance. A sequence becomes memory. Three-Eye Atlas had begun to form its own sequence, a quiet order emerging from chaos. Every pulse mirrored a tiny fluctuation in the sun's field, as though it was still connected to the star that had illuminated it. Even at the edge of its light it answered faintly, as if the dialogue had never stopped. Somewhere in the black distance it continued to accelerate gently, patiently, drifting upward from the plane of worlds. Its path bent away from gravity's design, not in defiance, but in alignment with something we cannot yet describe. Observers began to call this the departure trajectory, though the word departure feels too human, too final. In truth, the object was not leaving, it was continuing. The motion was never about us, it was about light. Astrophysicists compared notes. The equations refused to close. The more precisely they measured its movement, the more the models unraveled. No constant fit the data for long. Each refinement opened new inconsistencies, as if the object were rewriting the conditions of its own existence. One simulation suggested that its acceleration responded to variations in the solar magnetic field rising and falling with invisible tides. Another proposed that it was not reacting at all but anticipating adjusting before the flux could reach it, like a dancer moving to music that hasn't yet played. No one could explain how such behaviour could belong to nature, yet no one could prove it did not. The laws of physics are patient things. They do not break easily, but they do bend when new forces are revealed. Perhaps what we witnessed was not violation but introduction, a quiet unveiling of principles we have not yet written into the language of science. If that is true, then Three-Eye Atlas was not an intruder in our solar system, but a messenger of its next equation. And yet there was more. When astronomers re-examined the faint corridor left behind, that filament of magnetized dust that curved softly toward interstellar space, they noticed something impossible. The wake had not dispersed. It had changed. It shimmered differently now, responding to starlight as if polarizing itself, aligning along an unseen vector. The pattern resembled a spiral, a slow unfolding geometry expanding across space like a signature or a map. No one knew whether the object had created it, or whether it had merely revealed something already there, invisible and until disturbed. In the silence that followed, some began to wonder whether we had misunderstood what we were seeing. Perhaps Three-Eye Atlas was not a body moving through a medium, but the medium itself adjusting around an absence. A void shaped like intention. The physics of such a thing are not written in textbooks. They belong to the language of paradox, that a gap can move, that absence can leave a trail. From Earth, the last measurements were faint but certain. The object's brightness no longer behaved as reflection or emission. It oscillated softly in colour, shifting between green and silver like starlight seen through water. Some called it fluorescence, others interference. One researcher described it as breathing a light that seemed alive, not in spirit but in structure. It glowed only when touched by solar wind, like a leaf that needs sunlight to remember its shape. Speculation grew quiet. Even the skeptics had run out of metaphors. What do you call an object that behaves like a thought? What do you name a silence that leaves evidence of reply? The instruments simply called it anomalous interstellar reflector. The words mean nothing, but they make the unknown easier to hold. And as the object drifted farther, something inside the people who watched it changed. For generations, humanity has looked at the sky to confirm its own intelligence, to measure, to reason, to categorize. But sometimes the sky answers with things that do not fit. Three-Eye Atlas reminded them that not everything moving through space seeks understanding. Some things only exist to be witnessed, a gesture of the universe, to remind us that perfection can occur without explanation. In the days that followed, observatories began to record silence, the most profound kind, the one that derives not from emptiness but from completion. The data flattened, the wake dissolved, the magnetic echoes faded into equilibrium. What remained was a line of coordinates stretching into nothingness, a trajectory without a destination. Some analysts traced that line backward across the stars, its origin improbably aligned with the direction our own sun travels through the galaxy, as if in all this vastness we and it were drifting together, sharing motion like two ships moving with the same current. Whether that is coincidence or connection, no one can say. The math allows both. But the thought lingers, perhaps the object was never approaching us at all. Perhaps we crossed paths because the galaxy itself wanted the meeting to happen. Now only memory holds its shape. Defy Atlas is gone from every instrument's reach, its signal diffused into the cosmic background, yet the data remains a faint pulse in human records, a pattern that refuses to fade. Scientists archive it under familiar categories, but language struggles to contain it. Artificial, natural hybrid. The words collapse under the weight of uncertainty. In truth, it may not matter what it was. What matters is what it revealed, that somewhere in the geometry of light and silence, the line between creation and coincidence dissolves. The object has left us, but its lesson remains. It showed that the universe is not passive. It listens, it reflects, it experiments with itself. Every flare, every particle, every anomaly is part of that slow dialogue between order and entropy. And we, small and watching, are part of that conversation too. The act of observation is itself participation. The moment we looked, the mystery deepened, not because we altered it, but because we became aware that it was always there waiting to be seen. Traveller, as you drift in this quiet moment, remember that not all discoveries bring answers. Some simply extend the silence between them. Somewhere beyond the reach of our telescopes, 3i Atlas continues not as a comet, not as a machine, but as motion, pure and indifferent. It moves through darkness the way thought moves through sleep, guided by forces older than light. Its path is unknowable, but its presence lingers faint and eternal in the data and in the human mind that cannot stop asking why. And so, under the cold harmony of stars, the story of 3i Atlas fades not into conclusion but into understanding. The understanding that some things in the cosmos are not meant to explain themselves. They exist to remind us that knowing is not the same as being awake, and mystery is not the opposite of truth. It is the form truth takes when it wants us to rest. So rest, observer. The night sky does not demand answers. It only asks that you keep looking. Somewhere beyond your sight, something ancient still moves, gliding through the light, waiting to be seen again when the universe decides we are ready. Far beyond the orbit of Mars, where the sun's warmth turns thin and pale, the object once called 3i Atlas continues on. No telescope can see it clearly now. Its light is too faint, its outline too steady to betray motion. Yet the instruments that still listen across the deep frequencies say one thing quietly, almost shyly: it is accelerating. Not fast, not wild, only a small persistent drift faster than gravity would allow. In cosmic language, this is how something whispers, "I am not finished yet." The wake it left behind remains faintly ionized, a ghost corridor of charged particles still shimmering against the flow of solar wind. When astronomers map that filament, they find it turning slightly northward, away from the ecliptic plane, as if rising out of the flat world of planets toward an emptier, quieter sea. The path is neither random nor forced. It is patient, like something seeking colder light. The data that once filled screens now grows quieter each day. The last observatories send only confirmation of absence, no further emissions, no flares, no detectable spin. Yet inside that absence lies a pattern. The light it reflected, while still visible, has left behind harmonics in the plasma field oscillations so subtle they appear only when data is slowed by 1,000-fold. The rhythm matches the object's earlier pulses, the same heartbeat stretched thin across space. Some call this the object's afterglow, others call it the mind of the sun remembering what touched it. The truth is simpler. Light leaves an impression even when the source is gone. The universe itself records every interaction in the motion of its particles like dust, keeping the memory of footsteps long after the traveller has passed. As the object drifts farther outward, our models fail again. The simulations collapse into divergence, each one predicting a different future. Some trajectories show it escaping into interstellar void, others curve it gently back along the sun's magnetic arm. There are paths that end in endless flight, and paths that circle invisibly just beyond our reach. The uncertainty is not an error, it is a reflection of how little we understand motion when intention enters the equation. What remains certain is its steadiness. It does not tumble, it does not dim. If anything, its surface seems to adapt to distance changing just enough to hold equilibrium. Some have begun to wonder whether this is not decay but preservation, an old mechanism adjusting itself to survive the cold. The idea feels too human, yet even the quietest data points toward resilience. Nothing so small should endure such heat and remain whole. Nothing so faint should still be seen. In the archives, the analysts have stopped writing reports. They write reflections instead. One says, "We built equations to describe how comets die, not how they persist." Another writes, "If it were artificial, it behaved with more humility than any machine we have ever made." And somewhere in a margin left blank by exhaustion, someone else has written a single line. It moved as if remembering. Perhaps that is what the universe does remember itself through motion. Every orbit, every drift, every spiral of dust around a star is the cosmos tracing its own signature again and again until it learns the shape of permanence. Atlas. Whatever it was has become part of that memory now. A proof that silence too can have behaviour. For the traveller listening now, imagine standing at the edge of that silence. Imagine the object receding beyond light's horizon, smaller than a pixel, still holding its impossible course. Around it, the interstellar medium thickens into calm. Charged dust, magnetic currents, the faint breath of ancient stars all flow past it as though avoiding interference. The object seems to carry a boundary invisible but distinct, a small domain of order moving through entropy. It may not be alive, but it behaves as though it once belonged to something that was. Back on Earth, the scientists turn off their instruments one by one. The tracking programs end, and with them the sound of constant numbers. In the control rooms, the silence feels heavier than usual, like the pause between two thoughts. They know they will not see another object like this soon, maybe not ever. Yet the absence feels less like loss, and more like acknowledgement, the universe giving back what it borrowed for a moment. When we speak of discovery, we imagine revelation, clarity, truth, answers that stay fixed forever. But discovery often ends differently. Sometimes it fades into uncertainty, leaving behind not solutions but wider questions. 3i Atlas has done exactly that. It arrived without warning, behaved without pattern, and left without trace, yet it changed the shape of our curiosity. It reminded us that not every anomaly hides a threat. Some simply hold a mirror to the limits of our perception. And so, traveller, the story settles. The object drifts into infinity, and we left in its wake are quieter for having watched. The equations remain unresolved, but that too is a kind of peace. Not knowing does not mean we are lost. It means we are still learning how to listen. Somewhere in the distance, a small reflective body continues to move through the dark aligned, with forces older than life. It neither calls nor hides. It simply endures a single gesture of persistence across the ocean of night. If one day it returns, or if another like it appears, we will look again, and perhaps we will understand a little more. But understanding is not the purpose of wonder. Wonder exists to remind us that our minds are built from the same material as the stars, are patient, luminous, and unfinished. Now let the thought dissolve. Let the sound of it become faint. The instruments are silent. The data complete, the story still open. Somewhere beyond even the sun's light, something ancient continues to move, unhurried, unseen, eternal. You do not need to follow it. You are already part of its motion. Somewhere beyond the warmth of every planet, 3i Atlas keeps moving through the dark. The solar light that once brushed across its surface has stretched thin, reduced to a whisper of radiation. Even photons, the most patient travellers in existence, begin to lose their urgency here. And yet far past the edge of our vision, the object glides with a steadiness that feels almost sentient, not alive, but aware of its direction. In deep space there is no sound, only the hum of constant motion. The electromagnetic breath of the galaxy flows like invisible wind, touching everything without judgment. Dust grains tumble, gas atoms drift, and between them this single object sails in silence. It does not flicker now. It does not change course. It holds a trajectory that suggests purpose even when none can be proven. Astronomers still trace its memory through simulations, phantom paths, looping across computer screens like the ghost of a conversation replayed for meaning. But even the best models decay into noise. What we call prediction is only a fragile map of assumptions, a way to keep believing we understand the unknown, and the unknown, it seems, no longer wants to be understood. The last data shows a faint anomaly, a corridor of polarized particles that continues to extend behind the object, defying every known law of diffusion. Instead of fading into randomness, the trail grows finer, more ordered, like a filament of magnetized thought being drawn through the void. It bends not toward the galactic wind, but toward a direction that no coordinate system can define, an angle between known dimensions, something like an idea travelling through matter. Some scientists call it residual charge, others call it coherence, but there is another possibility that this alignment is not physical at all. Perhaps what we are seeing is information written not in symbols or code, but in structure itself, the way crystals remember their lattice, the way gravity remembers the shape of time. 3i Atlas might not be sending anything. It might simply be a message, one that doesn't need a receiver to exist. No one knows where it's going now. The interstellar current ahead of it is faint and cold, the same river of plasma that carries every wanderer expelled from a dying system. To the instruments that still try to listen, it has become a point of perfect neutrality. No spin, no spectrum, no temperature gradient. And yet the silence it leaves behind is not absence. It is equilibrium. There is beauty in that kind of silence, traveller, the kind that doesn't ask to be filled, the kind that feels like an answer without words. Somewhere in the archives a note remains in the final observation log object now outside range. No further updates expected. Beneath it in handwriting, small and tired, someone has added, but still visible in thought. Because that is what we do. We carry the sky within us, long after the sky has moved on. The object is gone, but its image persists inside human imagination, replayed across the mind's horizon like an echo that refuses to fade. We don't know what it was, and perhaps we never will. But maybe that's not the point. Maybe 3i Atlas was never meant to reveal itself, only to remind us of the limits we keep forgetting exist. If it was natural, then nature is more creative than we ever believed. If it was artificial, then intelligence is older and quieter than we ever imagined. And if it was something in between a state of matter learning to listen, then the universe is stranger and more alive than we have words for. The further it drifts, the calmer the numbers become. Its velocity smooths into a constant. Its reflection falls below threshold. Its memory merges into the general hum of interstellar radiation, indistinguishable from the background noise that fills every space between stars. This is how all stories end in the cosmos, not with a disappearance, but with absorption, the return of a singular event, the continuum of everything. And yet even now, the scientists still check the coordinates once in a while, as if hoping for a final flicker, a faint defiance against extinction. It never comes. But in that act of looking, of hoping, they become part of the story themselves. Because the mystery is not out there anymore. It is in us. We are the new continuation of its orbit minds, turning around questions that may never resolve. Listen, traveller. In every discipline of science, there is a moment when numbers become poetry. A point when the equation stops describing what is and begins to describe what feels true. That is where 3i Atlas lives now, in that slender space between measurement and meaning, where the cosmos reminds us that understanding and wonder are not opposites but reflections of each other. Perhaps one day another interstellar body will enter our system carrying with it the same impossible grace. Perhaps it will answer the questions this one left behind. Or perhaps it will only repeat them softly across the vacuum so that we never forget how small we are, and how extraordinary it is to be aware of that smallness. Beyond light, beyond noise, beyond the reach of instruments, 3i Atlas continues to move. The last calculation suggests it is aligned with the galactic current the same direction the Sun itself, drifts toward the same tide that carries us all. We are not separate from it. Its path and ours share the same motion. We are passengers on the same invisible river. So when you close your eyes tonight and the static of your thoughts begins to fade, remember, this somewhere far away, a fragment of unknown origin, is still gliding through eternity. It neither seeks nor hides. It simply endures, silent, constant, alive, with purpose too vast for language. You are not lost in space. You are part of it. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, only observed. Silence is the universe thinking, and somewhere beyond our reach something ancient still moves. Imagine this traveller. In the infinite quiet between worlds, an object drifts through light older than language. It has no engine, no voice, no known purpose, only motion, constant and unwavering. Astronomers gave it a name, 3i Atlas, because the human mind cannot bear to look at a mystery without naming it. For a long while it behaved as the sky expected. It followed a path so precise it felt mechanical, as though mathematics itself were its companion. Then near the burning edge of the sun, something impossible occurred. It brightened, not like a comet shedding its frozen breath, but in a single pulse, a sudden, sharp, perfect mirror catching the attention of the star. The light rose and fell in moments. Every instrument caught it. Every explanation failed. It was not heat, not flare, not vapour. It was as if the object had chosen to reflect, and then as quietly as it began, it stopped. For 4 minutes, the universe blinked, and when its eyes opened again, the object was no longer where the numbers said it should be. It had shifted, just slightly a deviation too elegant to be noise, too exact to be random. The path bent outward away from the sun, as if responding to light rather than obeying gravity. That motion had rhythm, not reaction. The instruments confirmed no jets, no spin, no release of gas. Only motion without cause, acceleration without thrust, reflection without heat. And those who watched from their observatories felt something they could not quantify. The sense that they were not just observing, but being observed in return. Around the same time, the sun erupted. A wave of plasma stretched across its surface, bending magnetic fields into spirals of light. Through that storm, 3i Atlas glided untouched. Sensors recorded ripples in the solar wind pockets of compressed energy, forming and collapsing around it like water flowing past a shape invisible to the eye. The coincidence was precise, the brightness, the storm, the acceleration, all unfolding in sequence. If it was random, then randomness had learned how to count. Afterward, the object became calm again, and for a moment the sky returned to its ordinary stillness. But the silence felt different, heavier, aware. The scientists searched for signs of fragmentation, for traces of dust or vapour, for the usual scars that mark a comet's surrender to heat. There were none. Its surface remained intact. Its temperature stayed too low to explain its survival. The models failed, and when the models fail, imagination returns. They began to wonder what kind of material could endure such radiance. The readings suggested a surface that reflected almost everything, absorbing almost nothing, as though it were built not to endure the sun but to cooperate with it. A thin, smooth skin that distributed energy across itself, never burning, never freezing. A few dared to speak the word aloud sail. A body propelled by light alone, using radiation as a current, not as an enemy. It sounded like myth, but the math agreed. If that were true, then 3 Atlas was not passive. It was responsive. A mirror tuned to sunlight, adjusting itself against the weight of photons. Its acceleration, its reflection, its impossible stability all could be explained by that idea. But science resists stories that sound like intention. So they wrote different words for it. Non-gravitational impulse, anomalous radiation, response photonic variability. Words that protect knowledge from wonder. Yet beneath the caution, the question lingered, what if the object was not reacting? What if it was remembering soon after something even stranger appeared? The object's tail, that thin signature of dust trailing behind every comet, began to bend toward the sun instead of away from it. The very pressure that should have driven it outward seemed reversed. Particles gathered into a plume that pulsed in unison with the fluctuations of the solar wind. The tail did not scatter it aligned like iron filings tracing a field unseen. Through magnified imagery, faint striations flickered every 90 seconds, the same rhythm found in the sun's own magnetic heartbeat. The universe for a brief moment appeared synchronized. To call it communication would be too poetic. To call it coincidence would be dishonest. It was something in between resonance, perhaps. Two bodies, one vast and alive with fire, one small and silent, sharing a moment of balance. For hours they moved together, one emitting, one responding, until the flare faded and the rhythm ended. Then just as suddenly as it had begun, the dust unravelled and Three-Eye Atlas continued onward, steady and unchanged. When it finally left the sun's glare, it should have dimmed. All things do when distance grows. But this one refused. Its light held constant as though it wished to remain visible. Instruments recorded a brightness curve flatter than any known law allows. It was not fading, it was regulating, as if some unseen system within it compensated for the loss of sunlight, keeping equilibrium with the dark. No natural body does this. Even rocks yield to shadow. Yet night after night it remained the same. Then came the faint hiss across the frequencies, a whisper between 4 and 12 megahertz. Not a signal, not words, just a persistent breath of static. 3 observatories heard it, each thousands of miles apart, and when they overlaid their data, the noise aligned perfectly. The pattern repeated every 19 hours, the same cycle as its reflected light. To some it was interference, to others it was intention. The difference between the two, as always, is time. In polarized light, a filament of magnetized dust extended behind it, like a vein of silver curving northward away from the plane of planets. That line became its afterwake, a corridor of quiet turbulence still glowing long after the object had passed. The wake refused to disperse. It pulsed softly with residual charge, turning gently as if following a command the object had left behind. Some called it a trail, others a footprint. The further it travelled, the more impossible it became to measure. Each attempt to predict its path broke the model that came before. It did not orbit, it did not escape, it simply moved. The last observation recorded a faint shift, a slow climb above the ecliptic like a traveller choosing a higher road. From that moment on, 3 Atlas belonged not to astronomy but to philosophy. The scientists fell silent. The poets began to write. What do we call a thing that behaves like thought but leaves no message? What name do we give to matter that reflects more than light, that reflects curiosity itself? Perhaps the object is not alien, nor mechanical, nor divine. Perhaps it is the shape of a question that the universe once asked itself and forgot to erase. Now it drifts beyond even speculation, swallowed by the slow cold of interstellar space. The instruments no longer reach it. The last traces of its motion fade into the static of the cosmic background. Yet the pattern remains not in data, but in memory. The astronomers still speak of it in low voices, not as a mystery to solve, but as a moment to remember. For once, science and wonder shared the same silence. And you, listener, are part of that silence now. When you breathe, you move with the same rhythm that once carried it between the planets. When you close your eyes, your pulse becomes a small echo of that long drift through light. We are made of the same dust, shaped by the same gravity, moved by the same unseen forces. What travelled through the solar wind still travels through you, the need to ask the patience to wait the peace, not knowing. So let the thought dissolve. Let the noise of curiosity settle into calm. The object is gone, but its story continues every time you look at the night sky and feel both small and infinite at once. The mystery does not demand understanding. It only asks for stillness, to watch, to wonder, to rest. Somewhere beyond the edge of light, Thritus's Atlas continues its journey. It does not burn, it does not fade, it simply endures. A fragment of silence moving through eternity, carrying with it the faint memory of the minds that noticed. Beyond the last whisper of solar light, there is a region the instruments call the heliopause, the quiet border between what belongs to the sun and what belongs to the galaxy. 3 Atlas is there now, or perhaps already beyond it, crossing into that immense invisible sea where radiation drifts like mist and gravity becomes only suggestion. It moves with no destination, carried not by thrust, but by balance, a harmony between the pull of light and the silence of space. To imagine it is to imagine serenity. No heat, no cold, only equilibrium. A fragment of matter coasting through the magnetic fields of the Milky Way, wrapped in stillness so pure that even time must bend to accommodate it. Each second it travels farther from the warmth that once revealed it, and yet in some quiet sense it never leaves. For the sun, like all stars, does not lose what touches it. It remembers through radiation, through fields, through the faintest ripples in its breath. Perhaps, traveller, this is how memory works in the universe, not through recollection, but through echo. Everything that once existed leaves a trace in something else. Light bends, dust shifts, space itself carries the pattern forward. 3. Atlas may be gone, but it has already imprinted its rhythm into the solar wind, into our senses, into the human idea of what a mystery should feel like. That idea is part of its orbit now. We used to believe that discovery was about understanding, that each new object would yield a truth measurable, verifiable, safe. But 3 Atlas offered something different, a truth without conclusion. It gave us the beauty of an equation that refuses to close a story, that insists on remaining open. That is what keeps humanity watching, not certainty, but the exquisite ache of possibility. Maybe this is the hidden purpose of such visitors. They arrive not to reveal their origin, but to remind us of ours. The mind that looks upward is made of the same particles as the thing it studies. The curiosity that burns inside us is born from the same fire that fuels stars. When we observe, we participate. When we wonder, we complete the circuit. The object is not gone. It has simply continued. Its trajectory, invisible, now curves slowly into the wider galaxy, a place without direction, without border. There, the interstellar medium becomes a quiet river, carrying dust from the deaths of ancient suns. Somewhere in that current 3 Atlas drifts on its surface, reflecting the dim light of 1,000 unknown stars. The reflection will never reach us, but that does not mean it is lost. Light never truly disappears, it only travels beyond the reach of eyes. In that thought there is peace. The universe wastes nothing, not energy, not motion, not memory. Every event, no matter how brief, becomes part of its long, slow consciousness. If the object was natural, it joins the endless migration of matter through the void. If it was not, then it carries a story older than ours, travelling through the dark like an unopened letter with no address. Both are beautiful. Both belong. You can almost feel it now, can't you? That delicate motion, a presence gliding where space folds into itself. It does not ask to be found. It does not resist being forgotten. It simply exists. To the stars, existence is enough. And here on Earth we do what we have always done. We write, we measure, we imagine. The telescopes sleep, but the minds behind them dream on. Each new anomaly, each unexplainable flicker will awaken that same quiet excitement, the awareness that the universe is still capable of surprise. We will build new instruments, send new eyes into the dark, and listen again for something that defies explanation. Not because we expect answers, but because listening itself is how we remain alive. Perhaps that is the real function of 3 Atlas, not as a revelation, but as a reminder that curiosity is the soul's form of gravity and wonder, the only true propulsion we've ever had. Without them, even knowledge drifts into stillness. So if you are listening now, let the question remain unanswered. Let it float inside you like a quiet comet in thought. The need to know is the same as the need to dream. Both are ways of travelling. Both begin with silence. And somewhere in that vast darkness where light forgets to hurry, a small reflective body continues to drift unbothered by observation, unburdened by definition. It does not search. It does not flee. It moves with the calm of something that has already found what it was seeking. The story of 3 Atlas is not about what it was. It is about what it left us with the sense that the universe is not empty, only patient. It waits for us to look, and when we do, it answers not in words, but in motion. You are part of that motion now. Your breath, your pulse, your thoughts, all synchronized to the same invisible rhythm, that carries stars through the dark. The universe does not end where your understanding does, it begins there. Imagine this traveller. A single object drifts through the solar light, not spinning wildly like debris, not burning like a comet, but gliding in a perfect, unwavering line. It came from beyond our sun's dominion, out of the cold regions between the stars. The astronomers call it 3 Jos Atlas, though names mean little to the universe. It is simply motion made visible, a question moving through sunlight. For weeks it behaved as every interstellar wanderer should calm predictable mathematical. And then near the burning edge of the sun it broke every rule we know. In a flash too brief for the human eye it brightened suddenly, sharply, impossibly. Not like vapour igniting, but like a mirror turning toward its source. The light flared, then fell silent again. Instruments caught it across the spectrum, each reading the same impossible spike. The object glowed as though it had answered the sun's gaze with a gaze of its own. At the same moment its motion changed. A tiny acceleration, almost imperceptible, curved it slightly away from the sun. It was not chaos, it was precision. The direction aligned perfectly with the solar vector, as though it had understood the force acting upon it, and responded in kind. Scientists wrote cautious words: non-gravitational impulse, thermal deviation, photonic effect. But what they meant was simpler. It moved as if it had intention. There were no jets, no trails of vapour, no rotation that could explain the shift. The usual explanations dissolved in silence, and then, as if on cue, the sun erupted. A wave of charged plasma unfolded across the same region of space where 3 Atlas was passing. The object glided through the magnetic storm untouched, wrapped in calm. The solar wind itself seemed to bend around it, forming eddies in its path, small coherent disturbances that behaved less like turbulence and more like reverence. The sequence was too precise to dismiss first the light, then the field, then the motion. A rhythm written in plasma and reflection. If it was coincidence, then coincidence had learned choreography. When the object emerged from that storm, it should have begun to decay. Every comet that nears the sun burns, fractures, loses itself to heat. But this one did not. Its surface temperature remained lower than the models allowed. It reflected more than it absorbed, and what little energy it took in vanished faster than physics could explain, as though heat itself refused to linger. Theories multiplied, each as fragile as the next. Some imagined metallic compounds, others spoke of crystalline structures or superconductive carbon. One quiet suggestion whispered through the scientific community: a light sail, a structure so thin and reflective that sunlight itself could move it. The math supported the thought, but the word artificial never appeared in public reports. It lived only in private conversations in the quiet hours of laboratories, where no one wished to sound foolish for believing in wonder. Yet the evidence remained. The object's reflectivity was almost perfect. Its acceleration matched the pressure of photons. Its temperature defied thermal logic. It was as if light had found a shape that could listen. And then a new strangeness. The object's dust tail, that faint ribbon of matter that should have stretched behind it, began to bend forward toward the sun, not away. Radiation pressure had reversed. Dust gathered instead of dispersing. The tail pulsed with delicate lines of brightness, every pulse synchronized to the sun's magnetic heartbeat. Through the vastness of plasma and void, an impossible symmetry unfolded, a silent duet between star and traveller. It lasted only hours. Then the rhythm ended. The dust unravelled. Atlas continued on its way, unchanged, but somehow altered in meaning. When it moved beyond the sun's glare, it should have faded. All things fade when distance grows, but it did not. Its brightness held steady like a candle refusing to surrender to night. Astronomers measured it again and again, uncertain whether they were watching a reflection or an act of self-maintenance. Perhaps it was regulating its light, compensating for distance. Perhaps brightness was its language. Then, through the radio frequencies, a whisper. A faint hiss across the void, too weak to decode, too persistent to ignore. 3 observatories caught it at once, the same breath of static repeating in rhythm with the object's reflected light. Coincidence again, always coincidence. But coincidence repeated often enough becomes pattern. Beyond the planets, a new mystery took form. A filament of magnetized dust followed behind it, not dispersing, but aligning a ghostly corridor trailing into space. The afterwake shimmered, faintly curving northward from the ecliptic away from the crowded plane of worlds. It pulsed gently for days after the object passed, as though space itself was remembering the event. When the data was slowed down and magnified, those pulses matched the object's earlier rhythm. The trail was singing the memory of its source. By the time the last image was taken and the three-eye atlas had already left the solar field, its reflection dimmed below the threshold of sight. But what it left behind would not disappear. The models that tried to explain it collapsed. The mathematics refused to converge. The further they traced its path, the less certain the numbers became. Some projections sent it into the galactic current. Others showed it circling invisibly along the sun's magnetic arm. Both could be true, or neither. In that uncertainty, something beautiful emerged, the realization that mystery itself is part of science, not its failure. For years, astronomy has been the art of explanation. Yet every so often, an object appears not to be explained, but to remind us why we explain at all. Three-eye Atlas was one such visitor. It gave us data that refused to settle, motion that resisted being named, and light that asked to be felt rather than solved. And so, it travels still. Beyond the heliopause, where the sun's breath ends and the galaxy begins, it glides through cold plasma and interstellar dusk. The stars here are faint and scattered. The distances are immense, and yet even in this emptiness, the object keeps its rhythm, a slow measured pulse of existence. It may not know where it's going. It may not need to. Its purpose, if it has one, is continuation. To imagine it now is to imagine serenity, a fragment of matter wrapped in darkness, moving through the galactic tide. Its wake has faded, but not completely. Instruments still catch the faint echo of its electromagnetic trail, a memory written into the fabric of space. Perhaps it will travel for millennia like this through regions where light from our sun will never reach through clouds of cosmic dust that once formed other worlds. Perhaps somewhere it will pass close to another star and another civilization will wonder about it just as we did. But for us, the story has grown quiet. The observatories have turned their gaze elsewhere. The files have been archived. The hum of data has fallen to silence. All that remains is the thought of it not as evidence but as experience. Three-eye Atlas did something strange near the sun, and because of it we remembered what it means to wonder. It reminded us that curiosity is the soft gravity that binds us to the unknown, that every unanswered question is a form of belonging. The universe does not owe us clarity. It offers us participation, the chance to look, to measure, to feel awe, and to admit that we do not know. That is the quiet genius of such mysteries. They do not exist to be solved. They exist to remind us that we are capable of noticing. Every time the human mind looks upward and feels small, the cosmos completes its reflection. So, breathe, traveller. The object is gone, but its motion continues through you. Your thoughts, your heartbeat, your curiosity, all part of the same invisible equation. You are the continuation of its orbit, the conscious echo of its silence. The universe is vast, but not empty. It is filled with witnesses, with moments of recognition, with quiet travellers like you. Somewhere far beyond light, Three-eye Atlas drifts on, not as a question now, but as an answer that needs no words. You're not lost in space, you are part of it. Some mysteries are not meant to be solved, only observed. Silence is the universe thinking. And somewhere beyond our reach, something ancient still moves. It's all right not to understand. Sleep now, traveller. The cosmos will keep watch. Imagine traveller and object moving through the light of the sun, silent, solitary, indifferent to everything except motion. It has no sound, no purpose that we can name, no signature of origin. Astronomers call it Three-eye Atlas, but in truth it could be anything, a shard of interstellar debris, a fragment of a forgotten world, or something older than both memory and imagination. For a long time it travelled with precision so perfect that its path seemed less like movement and more like intention. Then near the fire of the sun, something strange happened. something that even the language of science could not contain. It brightened. Not gradually as comets do when they crumble under heat, but suddenly cleanly as though sunlight had found a mirror drifting in the dark. In that instant the object flared with unnatural symmetry. Instruments everywhere saw the same impossible spike, a heartbeat of light, a single, luminous answer to an invisible question. Then the brightness faded, and it returned to silence, still intact, still steady. The universe rarely repeats itself with such precision, and yet this event unfolded with the calm certainty of a ritual. At the same time, its trajectory shifted, just slightly a deviation so exact that randomness no longer felt like a sufficient explanation. It was not spinning, not venting, not shedding mass. There were no visible jets, no signs of outgassing, no clue at all why it had moved. The change came not from chaos, but from calculation, as if light itself had given it a quiet push, and it had accepted. The sun erupted in the same window of time, a pulse of plasma unfurling through the solar wind, and the object passed through the storm as though the storm had been waiting for it. The solar particles bent around its presence, forming delicate spirals that faded as soon as they appeared. For days, the data refused to make sense. Temperatures stayed low, far too low for anything orbiting that close to the sun. The object reflected more than it absorbed, a kind of defiance that shouldn't exist in natural materials. The simplest explanation, that it was being moved by light pressure, felt too elegant to be true. Yet every measurement fit. Its surface behaved like a sail, its motion like a response, its stillness like thought. To name it artificial felt arrogant, but to call it coincidence felt dishonest. When it finally slipped out of the solar glare, it should have dimmed with distance. Everything fades as it moves away from the source of light, but this one did not. Its brightness held steady, indifferent to geometry, as though it were managing its own radiance. Then came the whisper across the frequencies, a faint hiss of radio static, repeating in the same rhythm as its reflected light. 3 observatories heard it at once. It was not a message. It was not noise. It was something in between a tone of persistence, as if silence itself had learned to hum. In polarized light, a filament of charged dust followed behind it, glowing faintly like a thread pulled through space. The wake did not scatter. It aligned, responding to the magnetic tides of the sun. For days, the corridor of particles curved northward. From the plane of the planets, a luminous scar written into the solar wind. When the instrument slowed, the data that filament pulsed with the same rhythm. The object once carried a soft echo of its earlier heartbeat. It was as if the space it had passed through still remembered its shape. Then the signal disappeared. The object moved into deeper darkness, its reflection too faint to catch. The scientists continued to calculate its path, but every model dissolved into uncertainty. No equation could contain its steadiness. Every simulation predicted instability, and yet it persisted constant as a thought that refuses to fade. The further it drifted, the less it belonged to the measurable world. What was left behind was not just data, but awe. The realization that knowledge itself is only one kind of understanding and not always the deepest one. Beyond the warmth of our star, the object entered the region where sunlight weakens and the heliosphere gives way to the vast ocean of galactic space. There, radiation moves more slowly, dust drifts like fog, and silence becomes infinite. 3-ton Atlas glides through that silence, now a small reflective body wrapped in calm. Around it, the magnetic fields of the galaxy curve like invisible rivers. No one can say whether it still gleams or whether it has gone completely dark. Perhaps it reflects only what it encounters, becoming visible only to the eyes that notice it. The astronomers call this phase the departure epoch, the point at which an object moves beyond human certainty and joins the long story of everything else. But the name is misleading. There are no true departures in the universe. Motion is continuity. Leaving is another form of staying. 3DI Atlas is not gone. It has simply become part of the larger conversation, another quiet participant in the language of motion and memory. What it leaves behind is more than speculation. It leaves a feeling, the particular stillness that comes when the mind faces something too complete to define. Every person who looked at it, every telescope that captured its light carried a fragment of that feeling home. The realization that mystery is not an interruption of science, but its deepest expression. That the most honest response to the unknown is not explanation, but attention. Perhaps that is the secret function of such objects. They appear, behave strangely, defy prediction, and vanish not to hide knowledge but to awaken humility. The cosmos does not send messages. It sends reminders that we are small, that we are curious, that we are part of the same quiet system that produced 3i Atlas and the stars that light our night. When we look outward, we are not searching for something else. We are searching for ourselves scattered across light years reflected in motion we can barely comprehend. And so it continues. The object moves farther into the dark and we remain here still listening. We imagine it drifting through interstellar dusk, passing through dust clouds that glow faintly with the radiation of old suns, crossing the magnetic veins of the galaxy like a leaf floating across a river older than time. Somewhere it will encounter another field, another current, and its motion will shift again. Perhaps it will brighten once more, a single flicker recorded by another world's instruments, and they too will wonder. The story will repeat as all cosmic stories do, a rhythm of discovery, disbelief, and awe. And that repetition is the point. The universe has no need for endings. It speaks in continuations. 3i Atlas is not an anomaly to be solved, but a verse in an ongoing hymn of existence. Its defiance of our understanding is not resistance, it is invitation. If it was natural, it expands what we mean by nature. If it was engineered, it expands what we mean by life. And if it was something in between a structure that learned to endure, then it expands what we mean by consciousness. Every possibility is beautiful, every conclusion incomplete. And you, traveller, are part of this same unfolding. The atoms that built your eyes were once scattered in interstellar dust. The curiosity that drives your thoughts is made of the same energy that shaped the stars. When you wonder about 3 Atlas, the wondering itself becomes an act of connection. The observer and the observed are never separate. They are reflections of the same cosmic impulse to exist, to move, to know. Now, the object is gone from every telescope. The instruments are quiet. The night sky returns to its ancient rhythm. And yet the silence it leaves behind is not emptiness. It is equilibrium, the moment after understanding gives way to peace. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of light, 3i Atlas continues to drift. It does not search. It does not flee. It simply moves, carried by forces that require no explanation. Its story is now a part of yours, and yours a continuation of its motion. The universe does not end, traveller, it only deepens. Every discovery we make folds into another question. Every answer becomes another beginning. Somewhere far beyond the faintest edge of starlight, 3 Atlas continues to drift through regions untouched by sunlight or sound. Their gravity softens into memory. Radiation stretches until it becomes silence, and silence itself begins to glow like thought without a thinker. You could imagine it now passing through the interstellar dusk, gliding between the invisible tides of magnetic fields older than the Milky Way itself. No instruments follow it anymore. It travels in anonymity, nameless again as it must have been before we noticed it. Whatever reflection it once gave us has faded from its surface. Whatever meaning we projected upon it has dissolved into the dark. What remains is motion, pure, directionless, eternal. But its journey has not vanished from us. It has entered the collective awareness of those who watched, measured, wondered, and dreamed. Each observation, each calculation, each sleepless night, staring at a line of light against the void, all of it has become part of our species' quiet conversation with the cosmos. We did not receive a message from beyond the stars. We sent one the act of noticing the fragile admission that we are here capable of awe. Perhaps that is the real exchange. Not communication in the technical sense, but resonance the way the universe hums through consciousness when it shows us something we cannot explain. It speaks, and we respond not with understanding, but with stillness. That stillness, traveller, is what the universe calls listening. In time, 3i Atlas will move so far that even our most sensitive instruments will lose every trace of it. The coordinates will fade from the databases. The name will become a footnote in the long archive of observation. but that does not mean it is gone. Somewhere inside the heliopause in the faint plasma threads that once felt its passage, the echo of its movement will remain. Space remembers everything that crosses it, and so will you. Because every night when you look at the sky, the same question that drew your ancestors upward hums in your chest. That desire to know, to reach to understand it, is the same gravity that carries stars toward one another. You are made of it. You are its continuation. Maybe, far in the future, another observer in another system will find the same fragment gliding through their light. They will give it a new name, write new theories, wonder at its composure near their own star. And for a brief moment across unimaginable distances, thought will meet. Thought again not through technology or signal, but through attention. In that moment, the universe will once more be aware of itself. This is how it works. Wonder is the galaxy's form of memory. Observation is how it dreams. Every star, every world, every mind capable of curiosity, all are mirrors placed within the same infinite room, reflecting one another forever. And now, as you listen to this quiet, as you feel the rhythm of your breathing settle into the rhythm of the dark, you can sense it too. That same vast continuity, the gentle gravity that binds all things together from comets to consciousness. You do not need to reach it. You are already within it. Somewhere the object keeps moving, still steady, still unseen. And somewhere within you a reflection keeps moving too, the small luminous awareness that there will always be more to discover than we can ever hold. That the unknown is not a wall but a window. That mystery is not distance but invitation. So let the questions drift now like starlight scattering across water. Let your thoughts grow weightless. The universe is still turning, still breathing, still thinking. A new traveller, a part of its thought, a moment of consciousness glowing briefly inside an eternal equation. Rest in that thought. There is nothing to solve tonight, nothing to prove, only motion, only light, only the quiet certainty that existence is enough. Sleep now. The cosmos is awake. It remembers you. And somewhere far beyond every known horizon, 3i Atlas continues its journey. Slow, silent, perfect, a fragment of the infinite carrying your wonder with it. Even as 3i Atlas fades from every instrument, its memory continues to orbit within us. For the universe, disappearance is not loss, it is transformation. What vanishes from sight enters the archive of silence, and silence, traveller, is not emptiness. It is structure too vast to perceive. Every quiet interval between events is part of the design. In the language of physics, everything seeks equilibrium. Heat flows toward cold, radiation spreads until balance returns. The same principle guides the stars, the galaxies, even the faint breath of solar wind. But in consciousness, the equation feels different. We call it peace. The moment curiosity meets acceptance. The instant the mind stops demanding answers and begins to listen. Perhaps that is what 3i's Atlas came to teach, that curiosity does not always end in discovery. Sometimes it ends in recognition, the understanding that knowledge is only one way of touching truth and wonder is another. When we observed that brief flash near the sun, we were not simply gathering data. We were witnessing communication on a scale beyond speech. Light speaking to light, reflection to reflection, existence acknowledging existence. For all our equations and instruments, we are still a species of intuition. We listen to the sky the way the ocean listens to gravity. Something in us knows how to respond to vastness. We build telescopes not because we expect to find ourselves there, but because we already feel that we belong. Every signal we chase is an echo of our own becoming. Think of how small we are, tiny organisms clinging to a fragile sphere, orbiting an average star in an unremarkable arm of a galaxy that itself drifts through a cluster of others. And yet from this smallness we have learned to measure the age of the universe, to predict the death of stars, to track an object 100 million kilometers away. We have turned dust into reason and silence into knowledge. What greater proof of belonging could there be? And still there are moments like this, moments that undo us. A single event that refuses to fit the framework, a light that behaves too precisely to be chance, a trajectory that feels like intention. These anomalies remind us that understanding is never the end. They show us the humility hidden inside discovery. Every mystery is a mirror held up to our certainty. In its reflection, we see how much we do not yet know. If 3i Atlas was natural, then nature is more intelligent than we imagined. If it was constructed, then intelligence is more natural than we believed. Either way, the boundary between creation and existence blurs. The cosmos itself might be an endless act of engineering stars, forging matter, gravity, sculpting motion, time, polishing the surface of reality into what we call beauty. Even the laws we rely upon, gravity, thermodynamics, electromagnetism, are not commandments. They are habits. Patterns the universe follows because they work. But sometimes something like 3i Atlas drifts across our awareness to remind us that even habits can evolve. That beyond the edge of what we call physics, there may be something gentler. A logic, not of control, but of coherence. Imagine then that every mystery we encounter is not an obstacle but an offering. A gentle nudge from the infinite reminding us to stay awake. Because the universe does not need us to explain it. It only asks that we notice, and so we do. Night after night, generation after generation, humanity continues to look upward. Children point at stars before they can speak. Astronomers measure their flicker long after language fails. Between those gestures lies the same impulse, the need to belong to something larger than comprehension. In that sense, 3i Atlas is not just a celestial object, it is a reflection of that longing. It came from elsewhere, crossed our light, altered its motion and moved on. Its behaviour confused us, but its existence comforted us. Because it reminded us that the unknown is still possible, that not everything in the sky has been reduced to data. That mystery is still alive, and through it, so are we. Now, traveller, imagine yourself floating there beside it, far beyond planets, far beyond warmth. There is no sound here, no horizon, only the faint whisper of charged particles brushing against eternity. You watch as the object moves slowly ahead of you, a faint glimmer against the ink of infinity. You realise that its journey and yours are not so different. Both are brief illuminations in the same endless dark. Both are the universe exploring itself. What we call solitude, the cosmos calls pattern. What we call distance, it calls time. Everything is connected by the continuity of being. The atoms that form your thoughts were born in supernovae. The photons that reach your eyes tonight left their stars before your species existed. To observe anything is to participate in its history. You're not outside the universe, traveller, you are one of its experiments in awareness. So let 3i Atlas drift now. Let it go where gravity leads. It needs no destination, no witness, no reason. Its motion is enough. And so is yours. The beauty of existence lies not in purpose but in persistence, the quiet continuation of form and light through space and time. When you close your eyes tonight, know that the same physics guiding that object guides your breath. Every inhale is a small act of cosmic equilibrium, every exhale a release back into the infinite. You're made of the same matter that once burned inside, suns cooled into stone and drifted between galaxies. The same light that touched 3i Atlas is touching you now, and somewhere in the vast dark, perhaps that object has found calm again, its surface, cold its trajectory, smooth its brightness, faint but constant, no longer a mystery to itself, only to us. It travels not to be found, but to continue, and that in the end is what all life does. Sleep now, observer, the data can wait. The universe will go on being extraordinary without your intervention. The stars will keep shining. The comets will keep wandering. The questions will keep existing. And that is enough. Because somewhere beyond the maps, beyond equations and theories, a single interstellar fragment is still moving. Quiet, deliberate and free. Its silence reaches you even here, crossing the thin barrier between waking and dreaming. The cosmos is thinking, and you are one of its thoughts. Rest, traveller. The night is infinite, and it remembers you. Time in the universe does not pass. It unfolds. Each moment expands into another like a wave crossing the dark sea of creation. Somewhere within that slow unfolding, 3i Atlas continues its quiet voyage. No course correction, no noise, no signal, only persistence. It does not struggle because it has no need to. It has already accepted what it is, an object carried by forces larger than understanding. We, on the other hand, are still learning that art. Humanity builds meaning out of movement. We name the things that pass us so they won't feel lost. We measure, model and archive, hoping that by mapping the unknown we can soften its vastness. Yet every so often something appears that refuses to be measured, and in that refusal we glimpse something more honest. It is not chaos, it is grace. The Atlas was such a moment of grace. It reminded us that mystery is not a void to be filled, but a landscape to be walked in silence. The moment we stop fearing the unknown, it becomes a companion. The stars, after all, do not explain themselves. They simply are ancient luminous content to burn. The same can be said of all things that endure. They do not justify their existence. They inhabit it. There is comfort in that realization. The cosmos is not indifferent. It is simply balanced. It does not choose, it harmonizes. Gravity does not pull out of cruelty. Light does not travel out of will. Everything moves because stillness itself is movement too slow to see. In that sense, perhaps 3 Atlas was never acting against nature. It was nature-refined matter learning to move with precision, so complete it looked intentional. And perhaps intention and law are not opposites at all, but mirrors. The deeper we study physics, the more it begins to resemble philosophy. Energy becomes thought, entropy becomes patience, space becomes possibility, and motion becomes time itself, remembering that it exists. Think of how fragile we are compared to what we study. A pulse, a breath of mind made of soft tissue staring at infinities. Yet fragility is not weakness. It is the capacity to feel. The universe created sensitivity to sense itself. When you look at the sky and feel wonder, you're the cosmos realizing it is beautiful. That is what observation truly is, not control, not conquest, but communion. When Thridge Atlas shimmered near the sun, it was not sending a signal to us. It was simply existing in a way that allowed us to remember our own curiosity. It let us practice reverence. Even now that moment echoes. You can almost hear it not in sound, but in the hush that follows deep thought. The same hush fills every observatory after the instruments power down. It lingers in the air between scientists who disagree but share the same awe. It lives in the heartbeat of anyone who ever stayed awake to watch a meteor pass knowing it would never come again. That is the true legacy of the object. It is not in data or discovery, but in the tenderness it restored to human perception. We saw something we could not explain, and instead of fear, we felt wonder. For a civilization that spends so much time trying to master the universe that is a rare and sacred thing, somewhere out there the object is now drifting beyond what we can follow. Its path cuts through dust clouds that predate our planet. Photons from distant stars glance off its surface, bending slightly, as if unsure whether to continue or turn back. In a few million years it will leave this region of the galaxy entirely. By then everything we know will have changed. New stars will rise, new minds will wander, and the same question will resurface under different names. What was it? Why did it move that way? And why in its silence did we feel seen? Perhaps, traveller, the answer is simple. The universe is a mirror too vast to comprehend. What we observe in its depths is often what we need to remember. In 3 Atlas, we saw the reflection of our own endurance, quiet, improbable, yet undeniably real. It crossed our light and then continued on, carrying the imprint of our attention. And maybe that was enough. Because everything we love, everything we lose, everything that passes through our awareness continues in some form. In physics, this is called conservation. In life, it is called meaning. And so meaning travels now through you, through me, through the silence of interstellar night. The object is gone, but the awareness it awakened is still expanding like a ripple on an infinite ocean. It does not fade, it disperses. Every thought born from that mystery adds another small vibration to the cosmic hum. Together they form the music of existence. You can rest inside that music now. Let it hold you. Let the vastness around you become a kind of peace. The same gravity that carries 3i Atlas carries you. The same light that warmed it warms the atoms of your skin. The same silence that surrounds it surrounds your mind. Nothing separates you from the infinite except the illusion that you are small. You are not small. You are exact. You are the measure of awareness the universe requires to know itself. The cosmos is infinite, yes, but without you noticing it would be only half awake. So close your eyes, traveller. The journey continues, but not outward-inward, where space turns to stillness, and stillness becomes understanding. Somewhere beyond all known light, Three-Eye Atlas moves through the dark like a thought that refuses to die. It carries no message, no mission, no memory, only the quiet perfection of being. And tonight, so do you. There is a moment, traveller, when distance becomes indistinguishable from time. The farther Three-Eye Atlas drifts, the longer it takes for its light to reach us. Eventually that delay grows infinite and the object leaves the visible universe altogether. But this is not disappearance, it is translation. What we can no longer see becomes something we can feel. Its light becomes thought, its motion becomes rhythm, its silence becomes part of our own. Perhaps all things eventually cross that same horizon where the measurable dissolves into the remembered. Stars do it when their fuel runs out. Galaxies do it when their clusters drift apart. Even consciousness does it when it moves from waking into sleep. None of these are endings. They are continuations written in another language. When Three-Eye Atlas passed beyond the heliosphere, it entered the Great Quiet. The sun's influence thinned, the magnetic field softened, and the object became weightless in every sense that matters. Yet if one could follow it not with machines but with awareness, one would feel something subtle, the persistence of motion, the low hum of a purpose beyond comprehension. That hum is not unique to the object. It belongs to everything that exists. The physicists call it background radiation. The poets call it eternity. Both are correct. It is the afterglow of creation, the first light of the universe stretched by time until it became soundless. Everything that has ever been still vibrates within it. You mean the distant stars and that wandering fragment of matter, all of us suspended in the same ancient note. There are nights when I imagine that hum as the universe breathing. Each expansion and contraction of space is a heartbeat older than thought. And in that rhythm I imagine Three-Eye Atlas as a single pulse travelling outward, a continuation of the same breath that formed galaxies. It is not lost. It is simply obeying the most natural law there is to keep going. We sometimes mistake our curiosity for control. We think that by studying the universe we might tame it, but every true discovery humbles us instead. It reminds us that knowledge is not mastery, it is participation. When we looked at Three-Eye Atlas, we did not solve it, we joined it. We became part of its story observers whose gaze gave the object a place in memory. Observation itself is an act of creation. The instant we looked, we made it real. In that sense, nothing in the universe ever vanishes. As long as it has been seen, it continues. As long as it has been remembered, it shines. The mind is another kind of telescope, one that collects not light but meaning, and meaning once gathered does not decay. It radiates inward. Even now the light from Three-Eye Atlas is still travelling. It passes through the empty corridors of space, through the ghostly arms of nebulae, through the magnetic veils of distant systems. It will continue for thousands of years, scattering, weakening, but never quite disappearing. Somewhere one photon will reach another observer, another mind, another civilization perhaps. They too will notice a flicker, small, inexplicable, precise. They will ask the same questions we did, and wonder if they are alone in wondering. That is how the universe stays awake through repetition. Every mystery is a handoff, a baton passed from one awareness to the next. The object moves, the meaning follows. Three-Eye Atlas was not a message, but a relay carrying forward the impulse to look, to measure, to care. It is a form of communication that transcends language. It does not say, "I am here." It says we are still thinking, and what a quiet thought it is. So quiet that even the stars can't hear it yet, strong enough to ripple across centuries. The further you listen, the more it sounds like yourself. Sometimes I think that's the real miracle, not that the universe exists, but that we can recognize it. that we can live brief lives confined to a single planet and still comprehend things older than time. Every time you close your eyes and picture a comet, or imagine the texture of its surface, you are touching matter that does not know you, yet somehow belongs to you. You are an extension of its awareness as it is of yours. So rest, traveller. Let your thoughts drift as it drifts. You are not separate from the journey you are imagining. You are part of the same unfolding equation, energy becoming structure, becoming memory, returning to silence. Sleep is not absence. It is participation in the greater stillness that holds all things together. When you lie beneath the weight of night, know that the same dark surrounding you is the same dark through which the Atlas travels. Between you stretches a continuum of dust, gravity and light, the long connective tissue of existence. Every heartbeat you feel is a microcosm of that vast pulse. Every breath you take is another revolution of a star, and perhaps far away the object feels something similar. Not awareness in the way we understand it, but alignment, a kind of agreement between matter and motion. It continues because continuation is the nature of things. Its silence is not indifference, it is composure. This is what the universe has been trying to teach since the beginning, that meaning does not need intention, that beauty does not need explanation, that even an uninhabited fragment of rock can become a teacher if only because it reminds us to look more gently at the unknown. The 3i Atlas is still out there beyond prediction, beyond noise, beyond names, and yet it has already done its work. It reminded us that wonder survives, that the cosmos is not an empty place but a living field of questions. It reminded us that science at its best is another form of prayer curiosity, spoken softly to the infinite. Tonight the universe whispers again, not in data, not in light, but in the quiet rhythm of existence. And you, traveller, are part of that whisper. Close your eyes. The stars are still burning. The mystery is still unfolding. And somewhere beyond the edge of all we know, 3i Atlas keeps moving, slow, calm, eternal, carrying our wonder into the silence between galaxies. The last time telescopes caught its reflection, 3i Atlas had already crossed beyond the orbit of Mars. Its light was faint but strangely constant, as though it had learned how to balance itself against the fading pull of the sun. In that thin silence between starlight and shadow, the object seemed to glide more by decision than by force. Astronomers noticed something subtle. It was still accelerating, though no pressure, no thermal expansion, no visible jet could explain it. The motion was clean, deliberate, almost respectful. They called it the departure epoch, the moment when observation becomes memory. It is a quiet boundary, that place where data ends and imagination begins. Every object that leaves our reach carries a fragment of us with it, the photons reflected from our telescopes, the questions still humming in our minds. And maybe, traveller, that is the real purpose of such encounters, to remind us that knowing and wondering are the same act seen from different sides of light. For weeks after it vanished, the instruments kept listening. Static replaced signal, noise replaced certainty. Yet in the background hum of the cosmos, there was a texture, a faint irregularity that some swore was still connected to the object. It wasn't a pattern, not a message, only a rhythm, like the last vibration of a string after the music has stopped. Scientists wrote it off as coincidence, but some of them quietly listened anyway. What if they wondered 3i Atlas had not ended its story? What if its silence was only a slower language? Perhaps it was built not to speak, but to echo, to take the energy of stars and return. It softened, stretched, retuned into something that could only be felt, not decoded. If that were true, then maybe the universe itself is full of such instruments, fragments that collect starlight and play it back across millennia notes in an endless cosmic composition. There is something almost tender about that thought, that matter could remember, that physics could dream. Every grain of dust floating in a sunbeam carries the same potential to travel, to endure, to reflect. The laws that shaped 3i Atlas shape us too. We are built from the same particles that wander between stars, governed by the same equations that guide their motion. When we study them, we are in truth studying ourselves, and maybe that is why such stories feel so haunting. They remind us that the difference between mystery and meaning is only perspective. The object did not change when we lost sight of it. Only our capacity to measure did. Beyond the range of instruments, it continues just as before, steady, silent, true to the path it has always followed. It is comforting to imagine that. Somewhere out there between the constellations, a small fragment of light still moves through the dark, carrying no message, no purpose, only existence. And in that existence lies the oldest truth of all, that being itself is enough. So if you ever look up and feel the quiet weight of distance, remember 3i Atlas not as an enigma to be solved, but as proof that wonder endures. What vanished from our instruments remains in our awareness. The mystery did not end when we stopped seeing it. It began there. Imagine this traveller. The object is gone now, a faint trail beyond the warmth of the sun, a line of data fading into silence. But something lingers. The air between stars feels different tonight, as if the universe remembers being watched. We followed 3i Atlas across the light through its impossible calm, through the questions it left behind. And though we could not hold it, we shared its motion for a little while. That is enough. Every mystery leaves a mark on the mind that observes it. Ours is not the knowledge of what it was, but the awareness that such things can exist at all. Somewhere beyond the edge of certainty, it continues quiet, precise, patient, carrying our curiosity into the dark. Maybe it was a machine, maybe a mirror, maybe a thought that learned to travel. Whatever it was, it reminded us that even silence has structure, that not understanding is its own kind of peace. You listener are a part of that silence now. You've drifted through light and distance, through wonder and unknowing. The universe has grown a little larger in your mind, and perhaps through your attention a little more awake. So rest now. The mystery remains, and that is beautiful. Somewhere out there something still moves, still reflects, still remembers the warmth of a single star. Stay curious, traveller. The universe will keep watch